imagine consuming a banned drug, then testing positive in a dope test, then winning an Olympics gold, and then retaining that gold medal for years with your reputation and world record both intact? No, this is not a plot of a sports thriller. Reality, my friend, is stranger than fiction. Hello and welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Munman Bhattacharya. Let's connect the dots of what could arguably be one of the biggest doping cover-ups in the history of sports. The year was 2021. Tokyo Olympics was 7 months away. 23 top Chinese swimmers tested positive for the same powerful banned substance, trimetazidine or TMZ. TMZ is found in heart medication. It is used to treat angina. But traces of it were found in a very unlikely location, the kitchen of a Chinese hotel where Chinese swimmers stayed over 4 days, months before the Tokyo Olympics. But even then, there were no provisional suspensions of swimmers, not even a public disclosure about the case that one would reasonably expect. The swimmers were eventually allowed to compete in the Tokyo Olympics. There they won 3 golds. How? Well, see this report on the conduct of Chinese officials and the stand taken by World Anti-Doping Agency or WADA, the global authority charged with policing drugs in sports. Many of these Chinese swimmers are still competing for China, and some of them are favorites to win again at the Paris Olympics this year. For almost 3 years, not one word was spoken in the public domain on this particular case, not until the media broke the story. This leads us to ask a few questions. How did the banned drug get into the kitchen of the hotel where Chinese swimmers were putting up? Was there a cover-up? Were international regulators hand in glove with Chinese authorities? Are there loopholes in the system that are being exploited? And where does the buck stop? Let's first see what exactly happened in this case. In December 2020 and January 2021, China's best swimmers were all staying at one hotel, the Huaiyang Holiday Hotel in Shijiazhuang, a provincial city that's just a few hours away from Beijing. They were present there for a domestic meeting hosted by China's National Swimming Association. This meeting was designed to be a competitive warm-up for 200 of China's top athletes. This was the time when the COVID-19 pandemic was raging. So these Chinese athletes had been training in seclusion during the pandemic, and the national qualifying event for the Summer Olympic Games was just months away. 60 tests were conducted on 39 swimmers. 28 urine samples showed positive results. 23 Chinese swimmers tested positive for TMZ. And many of them went on to compete in the Tokyo Olympics. So what happened after Chinese swimmers failed their dope tests? Well, China's national anti-doping regulator, CHINADA, acknowledged the positive tests in a report. It said investigators had found traces of TMZ in sink drains, spice containers, and cooktop vents in the hotel's kitchen. But there were twists in this tale. The report gave no explanation for how a prescription drug available only in pill form had made it to the kitchen and contaminated it almost entirely. The report had 2 key findings. 1, there were low concentrations of TMZ in the urine samples, and 2, there were fluctuating negative and positive results. So this made the Chinese conclude that its swimmers had ingested the banned substance unwittingly and in tiny amounts. Intentional doping, it said, was impossible. Positive tests were the result of environmental food contamination, and so no action against the athletes was warranted. To put it simply, Chinese authorities ruled that the swimmers were victims of contamination. But there is a counter view. Some independent experts feel, how can low concentrations rule out intentional doping? After all, this could also mean that the athletes were at the end of the excretion period for the drug. In other words, the drug could have almost left their bodies when the samples were taken. So what has that got to do with intentional or accidental consumption? What's more, Chinada's theory that the swimmers had ingested the substance unknowingly became a ground for the Chinese authorities to break with normal anti-doping protocols. This means that by citing this ground, they were able to avoid temporary suspension of their swimmers pending further investigation. So call it accidental ingestion and avoid suspension. Chinada's report even claimed that TMZ was an unfamiliar drug in Chinese swimming circles. Really? Has China forgotten that in 2014, its most famous swimmer and Olympic champion Sun Yang was suspended for 3 months after testing positive for the same drug? The list, in fact, of such athletes is long. So what happened next? In June 2021, Chinada told WADA about its findings. And then, what did WADA do? Listen to this.
We carefully reviewed the decision of the Chinese anti-doping organization from every perspective. We interrogated every piece of evidence and gathered further information as appropriate.
WADA says no credible evidence of wrongdoing was provided by any source who came forward, so it accepted the Chinese version.
And ultimately, based on a number of contextual elements, factual elements, but also on the science, we concluded that this was a case of innocent exposure.
The Chinese swimmers who tested positive for dope made it to the Olympic qualifying meeting months later and then to the Tokyo Olympics. So how much difference can TMZ make to a swimmer's performance? Well, TMZ is a prescription medication. It means it is available on doctor's prescription only. It can help athletes increase stamina and endurance and hasten recovery times. It is difficult to detect because it quickly clears through the body, and its use comes with the most stringent penalties under anti-doping rules. So what were the options before WADA? Well, WADA has the authority to appeal against the rulings of national doping agencies. But in this case, it did not appeal. So the Chinese swimmers effectively got a clean chit despite failing the dope tests. And what does the rule book say? In the absence of mitigating circumstances, athletes who fail the dope tests face a ban of 2 to 4 years for the first offence and a life ban for the second offence. Neither Chinada nor WADA have any definitive answer on how the banned drug contaminated the kitchen.
The ultimate source, meaning how the TMZ got into the kitchen, was not discovered. Chinada and the authorities conducted a number of interviews in order to try and explore how the substance could have gone into the kitchen, but that didn't result in anything concrete, and they didn't hypothesize in their report.
WADA's handling of this case stands in stark contrast to how it acted less than a year later when faced with a strikingly similar episode. Just before the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games, a Russian figure skater, Kamila Valieva, had tested positive for the same banned heart drug TMZ. Valieva blamed contaminated food and tested for relatively low levels of TMZ. WADA swiftly appealed against the Russian anti-doping agency's decision to clear her, and the top court in sports eventually barred her from international competition for 4 years. Coming back to the present case of Chinese swimmers, while WADA, an international testing agency, which is an extra layer of independent oversight for global athletic competition, are denying a cover-up, anti-doping crusaders are demanding an independent investigation.
I think WADA has a responsibility to provide all evidence and publicly disclose all evidence when it comes to what they've received, emails, to build confidence. And if there's nothing to hide, then surely they should be willing to put everything out for an independent review outside the sport industry. In fact, give it to police authorities, whether it's the FBI or others that can review and look at the the validity of it.
It is important to note here that WADA was not able to conduct its investigation on the ground at the time due to the COVID-19 pandemic. WADA feels that's perfectly fine, but anti-doping crusaders are questioning the credibility of such an investigation.
Why WADA blindly or openly accepted the Chinese police explanation that there was TMZ in the kitchen. And, athletes we spoke today said, would WADA have allowed Russia to investigate itself when they had the institutionalized doping? And the answer, of course, is no. And so why did they allow Chinada and the Chinese police to investigate themselves and not hold it to a higher standard?
David Cowan, one of the world's leading experts on drugs in sports and a former long-time director of Britain's WADA-accredited laboratory, has this to say. I could not come to a conclusion on whether there had been a contamination or a pharmacologically effective dose, meaning just the perfect dose to enhance one's performance yet escape scrutiny by exploiting loopholes in anti-doping regulations. That leads us to ask, is everyone being subject to the same rules? And if not, will accountability be fixed and how?
There's so many things that bother clean athletes around the world that are aware of the system. I mean, they've effectively flipped strict liability on its head. They've had an authoritarian government with its secret security system provide a defense that they really don't question or challenge. How easy would it have been in this state to find out who had access to the kitchen?
An American Olympian who took home a silver medal from Tokyo says she feels her team was cheated in a race won by China. A British gold medalist is calling for a lifetime ban on the swimmers involved. The sports minister in Germany, where a documentary on this case was broadcast, is demanding an investigation. And a simmering feud between WADA officials and the US counterparts has now burst into the open. WADA has now appointed Eric Cottier, a veteran Swiss prosecutor, to review how it handled the cases. Cottier is expected to give his report to the executive committee of WADA within 2 months, just weeks before the opening of the Paris Olympics, where some of the same Chinese swimmers could compete. The onus is on the global anti-doping regulators to ensure fair play and the integrity of the medals awarded. These medals validate years of training, define athletes' careers, and confer pride on a nation. The least that is expected from international sports competitions, Olympics much less, is fairness and transparency. And if they are taken away, then accountability and justice. What comes to your mind when you think of Dubai? A marvel in the Arabian desert? Gleaming skyscrapers? Swanky shopping malls and dazzling streets? A full-on luxurious vibe? But have you ever imagined a contrasting picture of the city? If not, then watch this. What you see here is not a river or a lake where this man is kayaking. These are the streets of Dubai. Yes, you heard it right. A desert city where the weather is hot and dry. In April 2024, a historic downpour lashed Dubai and Oman. In just a few hours, more rain fell than the region typically sees in an entire year and a half. Roads and highways were flooded, houses were inundated, people were trapped in their homes, and Dubai, known for its fast pace, came to a standstill. Reports say several people died in the deluge in Oman and Dubai. The operations of the Dubai International Airport, one of the world's busiest airports, were disrupted. The storm flooded the runway, resulting in flight diversions, delays and cancellations. Passengers were stranded. It was total chaos. We must note here that rains are rare in the UAE and elsewhere on the Arabian Peninsula. Summer air temperatures tend to soar above 50 degrees Celsius. But why did such heavy rains lash Dubai? Initially, there was speculation on cloud seeding. Now, cloud seeding is a technique where chemicals are introduced into clouds to encourage precipitation. This method is often used in regions with water scarcity issues. The UAE, located at one of the world's hottest and driest areas, has been a pioneer in cloud seeding efforts to increase rainfall since the 1980s. However, climate experts think otherwise. They say rising temperatures, a consequence of human-induced climate change, are driving extreme weather events globally. Now take the example of China. This is China's Guangdong province. The South Chinese region received heavy and widespread rainfall, inundating villages and cities. Quite unusual and earlier than normal. Weather events in China have become more intense and unpredictable in recent times. The devastating floods swamped homes, damaged crops, and battered lives.
Everything's gone. All the seedlings are gone. I lost over 100,000 yuan. Our fields over there all flooded.
But Dubai, Oman and China aren't the only ones. The story is more or less similar in other countries as well. At least 69 people died in Pakistan in severe flooding after it started raining heavily this April. In April itself, a severe flood hit North Kazakhstan and hundreds of thousands were displaced there. The World Meteorological Organization's latest report says Asia was the world's most disaster-hit region last year. The UN body says most of the natural disasters in Asia were floods and storms, over 80%. Countries like India, Yemen and Pakistan were hit especially hard by floods, which caused the most deaths. A warming Arabian Sea means cities around it, from Dubai to Mumbai, are vulnerable to extreme weather. That's not all. Even homes are subsiding due to climate change. In London, for instance, the drying of the clay on which most of the city stands during summer heat waves is causing unexpected subsidence. This is landing owners with big bills. Estimates suggest homeowners face a $25 trillion bill from global warming over the next 25 years. Climate change is often cast as something happening to other people in faraway places and in desperate circumstances. But for much of the rich world, the costs are starting to come home.
Okay, let's go.
A warming planet spares none. Not the most developed countries, not even the wealthiest sheikdoms. China, once the most populous country of the world, is now facing a population decline thanks to its harsh population control policy. It may have abandoned its one-child policy, but its after effects continue to linger. But it's not just the human population that witnessed a drastic fall in China. That trend is visible elsewhere too. Where? In donkeys. Yes, you heard it right. If you see the figures, in 1992, China had over 11 million donkeys, but in the last 3 decades, the donkey population has fallen to just under 2 million. That's a more than 80% fall. So what caused this sharp decline? Did China have a donkey population policy just like it had for its people? Of course not. The answer lies in a traditional Chinese medicine known as ejiao. This medicine is made using gelatin extracted from donkey skin. So donkeys are slaughtered and the skin is then boiled to extract gelatin. Chinese believe this gelatin boosts their immune system. It improves fertility and has anti-aging properties. It is made into powder or pills and even added to food. Now, to meet the high demand for AGO, millions of donkeys are slaughtered every year. The interesting part is that this demand was not always that high and its usage was limited to the Chinese elite. But that has changed since 2011. Its popularity exploded after the 2011 TV series Empresses in the Palace, because here characters were seen consuming AGO for beauty and health. China needs about 5 million donkeys a year to produce and meet the demand for AGO. And it simply does not have enough donkeys to be able to meet that demand. So the Chinese started looking for donkeys elsewhere, particularly in Africa. Do you know the African continent accounts for 2/3 of the world's donkey population? Donkeys are crucial for African livelihoods, especially for women who rely on them for transportation and farm labor. However, for years, Chinese companies have been slaughtering millions of donkeys across Africa. As a result, the donkey population started dwindling at alarming rates in African countries. Cut to February 2024. The African Union adopted a continent-wide ban on donkey skin exports. The idea was to clamp down on theft of donkeys and smuggling of their skin, all of which are fueled by the high demand for the highly priced skins. Now, whether the governments of Africa can implement such a ban remains to be seen. If they do, they could seriously pinch the Chinese AGO industry. But for China, Africa is not the only source for donkey skin. There is Pakistan too. Pakistan has also become China's alternative source for donkey skin. The Pakistani government has a first of its kind 3,000-acre donkey farm in Okara district of Punjab province. It has been set up to boost exports to China. But despite individual country bans and regulations that are around, there is no stopping the illegal donkey trafficking and slaughter. A sustainable solution can come only if all stakeholders agree to be on the same page and by strictly implementing the regulations. The story of disappearing donkeys is a stark reminder of how human greed is taking over at the cost of sustainability. Well, that's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you next week with more raging issues that touch our lives and imagination. Goodbye for now from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Munmun Bhattacharya signing off. Take care and stay safe.